We witches work hard to master our craft. Our broomsticks can break any spear, pole, or staff. Nothing will ever hold us back. Whenever we're challenged, we always attack. Hello everyone, and welcome to my level 100 cap guide to playing the mischievous class of witch in Dungeon Fighter Online. I hope that I can provide some insight and useful advice for anyone who wants to try out witch, or through those who want to main her in current and future endgame content. Please note that all of this information is mostly accurate for the level 100 cap, and information will probably change if you are watching this in a new future level cap, such as the upcoming level 110 cap for DFO Global. I will probably give an updated guide once new talismans are introduced, if they are in the new cap. But for the time being, I don't think the core aspects of which will change anytime soon, and so I'll cover them in this video. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get into the details of how one can become a powerful homunculus summoning trickster from Pandemonium. This video is split into different chapters, all listed in the description below. Feel free to jump to whichever chapter fancies you. As you may already know, the different subclasses available in DFO can be categorized into their damage types and what stat, intelligence, or strength their damage depends on. Witch is categorized as an independent attack damage dealer who scales off intelligence, or int for short. In other words, Witch is a fixed int damage class. Remember that for fixed damage classes, you must refine your weapon instead of reinforcing it. Since Witch is a fixed int damage class, you want to make sure to get the appropriate enchants for her left side equipment. You will be looking for enchants that give independent attack and intelligence for your top and bottom equips. For example, the Lone Roseberry card provides both stats and is an affordable enchant that you can start with. For her right side equipment, it is the same for any DPS class, such as elemental attack enchants on your accessories and magic stone, PMI on sub-equipment, and all stat on earrings. Please note that there is raid equipment in level 100 cap that can change what kind of elemental attack enchants you want to have for your equipment. Let's now cover witch passives and what they essentially do. I will only be covering passives that directly contribute to damage output. This means that maxing every passive I mentioned in this section of the video, except for the weapon passive, is necessary if you want to increase your damage output as a witch. The first passive I'll talk about is Broomstick Control, which is always going to be level 1 as soon as you advance to become a witch. What does it do? It allows you to equip brooms, it allows you to fly and dash in the air with a broom, and it gives you additional cast speed and hit rate when you equip a broom. The broom is the unique weapon designated to witch, and allows them to engage in a new type of gameplay in the air. Flying allows for greater mobility in dungeons and can make some endgame mechanics easier. However, in the current context of level 100 cap, flying is actually not a big part of core witch gameplay in high-end content. In fact, because Broomstick Control only gives cast speed and hit rate, a witch can run any other mage weapon if they so wish, without suffering too much from it. This is a question I get asked a lot. Should I stick to a broom on witch? My answer is this: if it makes you happy, you should. I've been using a rod for the entirety of the level 100 cap, and I actually miss flying. I ran a rod because I wanted to juice up my damage as much as possible, but as of the epic rework we got several moons ago, both level 100 brooms are pretty strong choices for weapons now, so if you want to keep flying, go for it. I'll catch up with my broom in the new cap. Our next passive for witch is Befriend Familiars, and this is your battle passive. What does it do? For every level of this passive, you retain 2% more basic / skill attack. It speeds up the setup time of important core skills to the witch's kit, such as Gravitas, Mega Drill, etc. That means at level 5, the maximum level you can achieve via SP, you will get 10% basic / skill attack from this passive. This just means that your damage increases. This is also why I called this the Witch's Battle passive, since you can increase the level of Befriend Familiars beyond level 5 via Platinum emblems on rare avatars or rare clone avatars. By increasing this level, you get more damage. After Befriend Familiars, we have the next passive, Lollipop. What does it do? For every level of this passive, you attain 1% more basic / skill attack. It increases the greater success chance for witch skills. Like Befriend Familiars, this passive gives you more damage, but not as much as per level as Befriend Familiars does. It also increases the chances of you attaining greater success for your machines, which just means more damage. In fact, with this passive, every cast of your machines is basically now just a greater success. On top of Lollipop, you also get the passive Bitter Lollipop. What does it do? It lets you fail certain skills by holding down the skill key. Failed skills do less damage, but the damage loss is decreased with this passive. Why is failing certain skills something you want to do? Failing certain skills sometimes have faster animations over their success / greater success counterparts at the cost of some damage. I'll cover this in greater detail in a later part of this video, but sometimes faster animations mean more mobility during a fight for a witch. The next passive is Lucky Feeling. What does it do? It increases your critical hit rate. It increases your magical critical attack, and it increases your chance at a greater success for your skills. Like with the other passives so far, you want to increase this for more damage, in particular critical damage. This passive will also help you attain 100% critical chance. The next passive is Homunculus. What does it do? It lets you install machines such as Gravitas and Floric Collider so you're not stuck in the casting animation for them anymore. It also increases the additional skill attack for fails triggered via Bitter Lollipop. The passive also adds a slew of things if you choose to have homunculi summoned, but summoning homunculi is not really viable in endgame content where most fights are boss encounters. This is because, in order to summon a homunculus, you must kill an enemy with either Fly Swatter skill, and additional mobs do not spawn often enough in most boss encounters. This passive requires no SP to max out, and should be maxed out since it buffs attack power of several skills, including all awakenings like Ars Magna. The next passive I'll talk about is Lapis Philosophorum. What does it do? It removes a lot of debuffs from certain skill usages. For example, if you land your broomstick spin, you will no longer get confused. It allows Showtime to become an infinite duration buff until death. If you resurrect in an instance, you will have to cast Showtime again. It adds a jackpot effect for certain skills, which just means more damage for those skills. Lastly, it converts some elemental damage from your highest elemental attack and adds it on top of your other elemental damage. This is your second awakening passive, and you want to max this out to maximize the elemental damage conversion. What is the elemental damage conversion? What does it do? Depending on the familiar who governs the machine or spell, the skill will deal the corresponding elemental damage. For example, Mega Drill is governed by Frosty, and so it does water damage. If you are running a build where you are not dealing singular elemental damage, the damage conversion just buffs your elemental damage output for elements which are not the highest value. Finally, your last passive is Red Candy, which is your third awakening passive and is what you get if you decide to make candy out of the Philosopher's Stone. I'm not kidding, this is canon. It's in the lore. What does it do? It updates two skills, Black Manteau and Acid Rain. Black Manteau now grabs enemies you missed in the first cast, and Acid Rain is now mobile by following enemies. It also gives you more damage. Like with most 3A passives, it gives quality of life updates to some older skills in the Witch's kit. You now no longer have to worry about positioning your Acid Rain as it just follows enemies, and in boss encounters, this usually just means it follows the boss. Just make sure to cast it near them. The Witch gets two buffs. The first buff skill is called Ancient Library, and this is just a class buff skill for Witch that increases her damage output. Make sure to work on your buff enhancement window to get it to its max level of level 20. The other buff skill is called Showtime. This is a pretty big buff for Witch as it provides casting speed and cooldown reduction. At its max level, it provides 21.6% cooldown reduction for any skill in the Witch's kit with a few exceptions. The skills in the Witch's kit that are not affected by Showtime are all Awakening skills, Devolution Fly Swatter, and Giant Fly Swatter. Showtime gives a big CDR across the board for a good portion of a Witch's kit and allows a lot of wiggle room for more sustained focus builds for a Witch who wants to pursue more CDR. Now that we've covered buffs and passives for a Witch, let's go over some skills and brief descriptions for them. One of the earliest skills you get is Black Manteau, which serves as a holding skill. It is also an important source of iframes for a Witch, and its low cooldown makes it a reliable iframe skill in case you have to get yourself out of a pinch. For earlier level skills for a Witch, there are 3 bread and butter skills: Acid Rain, Lava Potion number 9, and Jackal. Acid Rain and Lava Potion are both attainable at level 30 and have low cooldown, which makes them great for repeated uses throughout boss encounters of any duration. With 3A, Acid Rain is now mobile and follows enemies, and with Bitter Lollipop, you can fail Lava Potion number 9 if you are fighting a boss that doesn't sit still. If you're fighting a more static boss, however, you can just regularly cast Lava Potion for its guaranteed jackpot effect for bigger damage. Both skills have roughly the same amount of cooldown, so they pair well together. Along with these 2 skills, you can also cast the Witch's special version of Cheeky Doll Shururu, named Jackal. Jackal can help round up mobs into a specific area and provides additional damage in boss encounters when it explodes after a certain time. You can also manually detonate Jackal at will. On top of these 3 skills, we have the following core machines obtainable before level 70 for a Witch: Gravitas, Raging Flame Furnace, Flore Collider, and Mega Drill. Gravitas is an easy install once you've unlocked Homunculus. It is easy to use and outputs consistent damage. Raging Flame Furnace is a powerful skill that can be buffed with its Talisman. It is a channeling skill and is often used in its failure state for more mobility. It becomes easier to use to its fullest potential if you use its Talisman. Flore Collider is another install skill for Witch, with its primary purpose being to hold mobs and bosses. Its damage isn't that great, but its utility still shines if you have to hold down mobs for a bit. I wouldn't recommend maxing this machine out. Finally, Mega Drill lets you ride a very cool looking drilling machine. It has pretty decent damage and can be used in 2 ways. If you want to use it as a damage skill, you can fail it and have it crash immediately, and it explodes dealing AoE damage. You can also use Mega Drill to help survive incoming damage, since riding it can soak up to 80% incoming damage until the drill car explodes. After level 70, you will gain access to more machines and spells that do big damage but may have bigger cooldowns. These are Flore Electric Rabbit, Frosty Snow Cone, and Lollipop Crush. Flore Electric Rabbit is another install skill that has pretty good damage output. However, without its Talisman, you are stuck controlling the machine until it's done. Frosty Snow Cone is another install skill with good damage output, but without its Talisman, you are stuck controlling the machine until it's done, just like with the Flore Electric Rabbit. Frosty Snow Cone also provides some iframes for a Witch, but because it tends to have a bigger cooldown than Manteau, it's not as readily available. These 2 skills are very good, but can put you in harm's way if you time your installations incorrectly in any encounter. Finally, Lollipop Crush is a hard-hitting skill with, unfortunately, high cooldown if you don't run any CDR besides Showtime. It also spawns candies that explode to deal delayed damage, and the candy's damage is based on whether you are hitting regular mobs or a boss monster. These 7 skills make up the core part of a witch's kit when it comes to dealing damage. As you can probably guess, certain skills become better and more worthwhile to use once you get their talismans from the Exile Mountains. I'll go over talisman builds in the next part of this video. Before we move on, however, I want to sort of highlight some of the skills that I did not mention yet. What's up with the fly swatters? Unfortunately, since Devolution Fly Swatter and Giant Fly Swatter are not affected by Showtime CDR, it's a little harder to justify putting SP to max these 2 skills if you can max out any of the 7 skills I've already mentioned. However, if you do have some leftover SP, putting some SP into Giant Fly Swatter is not an entirely bad idea. Giant Fly Swatter can also be used in combination with Broomstick Spin for some useful combos. Alright, Broomstick Spin. What's up with it? Broomstick Spin may not deal damage, but it is basically the very important glue to every witch and their rotation. The good part about Broomstick Spin is you don't even have to use a broom to use it. Broomstick Spin is useful for gathering mobs in regular dungeons and for stringing together parts of your rotation if you ever find yourself in the air, like if you're using Giant Fly Swatter. You can use Broomstick Spin to land faster instead of letting yourself fall naturally. If you fall to the ground using Broomstick Spin, you can even use it to immediately cast any machine. For install machines like Gravitas and Flore Collider, it becomes an instant free install before you can even get up from the ground. How about Awakenings? Witch has some pretty powerful awakenings, and like most other awakenings, you also get iframes during your animations. Lastly, there is Jacko Halloween, which is your level 95 skill. It gets affected by Showtime, so it enjoys the CDR, and it's a pretty nice skill for damage. In this section of the video, I'll give some pretty general recommendations for epic sets and mythics you want to run on Witch. There is RNG largely involved still in epic farming, but it seems that there's been a recent trend in events that help make farming epics easier, so you can actually meaningfully farm for certain sets without getting bullied by RNG. First, I want to talk about building Witch with a sustained focused versus a burst focused build. I think either is fine, and Witch can play with either playstyle and still perform well. Witch seems to have enough low cooldown skills that do decent damage, like Gravitas and Furnace with the Talisman, and high damage skills with higher cooldown that can be optimized further with the burst build. On the other side, a sustained build for Witch works well too, and it synergizes well with Showtime. Showtime gives CDR for most Witch skills, and you can lower cooldowns even further by going for CDR sets and items like Talisman Shoes or Dusk Traveler. You can make some big hitting skills like Lollipop Crush and Frosty have below 30 seconds cooldown if you build right, and this pays off if you really want to juice up your 30-second sandbag. In my opinion, it's kind of late into the 100 cap anyways by the time this guide comes out, so feel free to just build your Witch however you want to. Enough time has passed that burst builds are more viable than they were in longer fights like Ozma, so if you want to build your Witch to be burst, and you enjoy that type of playstyle, go ahead, feel free to. The same applies if you want to go for a more sustained focused setup. I personally enjoy more CDR on top of Showtime, so I can use skills like Lollipop Crush more frequently. Now that we have covered the topic of burst versus sustain, let's talk about what epic sets or mythics you might want to aim for on Witch. First, for mythics, some mythics you might want to hunt for are Reversed End. This is good for burst setups with hybrid pieces. Endless Research, also good for setups with hybrid pieces. War God's Last Desire. This is good for setups with non-hybrid pieces. Sea of Eternal Promises. which is good also for setups with non-hybrid pieces, and Ancient Abyssal Robe, which is good for burst setups with hybrid pieces. These are the usual top dogs of all mythics, and the sets they go with can be mixed with a lot of other epic sets. For epic sets, make sure to get the set for the mythic that you want. For example, if you obtain a reversed end, you would want to hunt for the rest of the Strange Fate set. I'll throw out some general recommendations for sets whose mythics were not mentioned that work well on Witch. Crossroads. Make sure to get the Talisman shoes if you're running Crossroads, however. Dusk Traveler, which gives some CDR. Time Traveler, which also gives some CDR. Dimensional Traveler, for some burst. Exotic Tropica. You want to run 3-piece if you plan on running a hybrid setup. And Abyssal Seeker, for burst, and also it works well with the Black Magic Researcher set, and also with the Secret Watcher of the Abyss set. There's probably other sets that work well on Witch. These are just the usual recommendations that I see that get thrown around for most classes, just because these sets tend to be strong on most classes. In particular, Talisman Shoes is an epic item that is pretty powerful on most classes with good skills affected by their talismans, such as Witch. Tally Shoes boost the attack power of talisman skills in certain slots and also lowers their cooldown, and this synergizes well with Witches while they enjoy some quality of life improvements endowed by their talismans. Speaking of talismans, let's go over recommended talismans for Witch. The 4 most recommended talismans are for Furnace, Flore Electric Rabbit, Frosty, Snow Cone, and Lollipop Crush. Let's go over each one in some detail. First, let's look at the talisman for Raging Flame Furnace. It adds the effect of a heat storm and extra AoE to the end of Furnace whether it is successful or a failure. This heat storm is especially useful in extending the range of Furnace if you use it in its failed state, which is most of your uses for Furnace anyways. The talisman also buffs the attack power of the skill itself. This talisman makes Furnace a pretty powerful, easy to use, low cooldown skill. The heat storm makes it easier to hit more enemies and to hit bosses, and the general buff to the skill is strong. Now, let's look at the talisman for Flore Electric Rabbit. It lets the machine operate on its own if your cast is a great success, and at level 100, it always will be a great success. The talisman gives additional cast speed, faster setup of the rabbit, and buffs the attack power of the skill. This talisman is basically a game changer if you want to stay mobile. By running it, Flore Electric Rabbit becomes an install skill that you can plop down near a boss before you run away or move to dodge an AoE. It also improves the combo of using Broomstick Spin to land faster and casting Rabbit. You no longer have to put yourself in danger because you have to manually operate the machine. Our next talisman is for Frosty Snow Cone. The talisman lets you set up the Snow Cone machine in high speed mode, so you no longer have to wait for it to wind up to its maximum speed. It increases the AoE effect of the skill and even pulls regular mobs closer into it. It gives the usual attack bonus like most talismans. Like the Electric Rabbit talisman, this is a game-changing talisman for a very powerful skill. The talisman hugely improves Frosty Snow Cone and frees you earlier from its animation, so you can keep moving. It also becomes easier to hit enemies and bosses with it, and you no longer have to wait for the wind-up time for it to perform at its maximum speed. Finally, our last talisman is for Lollipop Crush. It lets you use Lollipop Crush while staying on the ground. In particular, you no longer have to land with Broomstick Spin to combo a skill after Lollipop Crush. It lets you cancel into other witch skills. It gives CDR for Lollipop Crush, 10% of it in fact. And it gives the usual attack bonus like most talismans. With this talisman, Lollipop Crush is easy to use in combos since you stay on the ground and can cancel into other witch skills directly. For example, I always pair my Lollipop Crush with my Frosty Snow Cone, and this combo packs quite a huge punch. It also gives some nice CDR for Lollipop Crush along with the CDR from Showtime. And if you build for more CDR and use a Mind Stem in dungeons, you can definitely lower Lollipop Crush's CD so that it can be used 2 times in a 30-second rotation. These are 4 wonderful talismans that a witch can run, but you can only currently equip 3 in the level 100 cap. So, which talismans should you run? Here are some recommendations and advice from my own experience. I personally run Lollipop Crush, Frosty, and Electric Rabbit. This is because I did not want to give up the extra mobility provided by Rabbit, and I wanted to free myself from the channeling animation needed for Furnace. I also went for this talisman setup because I run a mostly CDR setup, and so I was able to lower the cooldown of all 3 skills that I was able to make up for the damage I lost by giving up Furnace with more uses. If you don't have a setup with enough CDR to gain more uses of Lollipop Crush or Frosty in a 30-second window, or you just really enjoy Furnace, staying with Furnace is viable. I'll also say the following. With the new 105 broom for witches coming eventually to DFO Global that plays around greatly empowering Lollipop Crush, it seems that running Lollipop Crush Talisman is pretty necessary. So, a lot of witches in KDNF currently are running either Lollipop Crush, Frosty, and Furnace, or Lollipop Crush, Frosty, and Rabbit. Either build is powerful as long as you don't give up either the Lollipop Crush Talisman or the Frosty Talisman. Finally, for runes, the usual recommended colors are purple, blue, and red. Green is also okay if you need some extra CDR for Lollipop Crush. As for what runes you should aim for, you should be running all Lollipop Crush runes now. Now, let's talk about Sirocco epics that you want for your witch. Here are some recommended sets. You can run either Gatekeeper or Assassin. These are the usual 2 top dogs for Sirocco sets for most classes nowadays. Gatekeeper is a powerful DPS set, and if you want the simplest use for it, you have to run all elemental damage enchants on your accessories instead of dual elemental damage enchants. So, you might need some money to respec for this. Assassin is a nice CDR set you can slap on top of your base epic and mythic setup if you need more CDR. If you went for a more bursty setup for your epics and mythic but feel like you need more CDR in your life, feel free to grab Assassin. At this point in the game, when this video guide comes out also, the other Sirocco sets are pretty viable for Witch too. If you want more utility and more movement speed, you can run Rotos, for example. Finally, we're at the last part of gearing for the level 100 cap, Ozma epics. The thing to know about Ozma epics is that individual pieces can be powerful by themselves, and you don't have to think about matching sets if you're worried about maximizing damage output. So, there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to deciding what Ozma pieces you'd like to run on your witch. Here are some of my recommendations. Red Main Magic Stone for more CDR for Giant Fly Swatter. Remember, Giant Fly Swatter is not affected by Showtime. Red Main Necklace for more CDR for Frosty. And Tiamat. You want to run at least 3-piece Tiamat with the shoes if you don't want to lose health by casting skills. And personally, I run Tiamat because I'm too lazy and I just want more damage. You can also run Rosenbach or Barrios pieces if you want more quality of life improvements in your gameplay, such as shields to soak up damage or faster movement speed for better survivability. Let's talk about Witch and high-end content, like raids, and 4-man content, like Black Purgatory. Witch was my first ever subclass on DFO, even back in the Nexon days. I picked her because her skills look cute and fun to use, and they still are. However, my experience with high-end content only began in the current level 100 cap. So, how is Witch in the current endgame? I think she's a pretty simple class to play, as a lot of her kit are install skills, so you can just plop down your machine and run if you have to. There's no inherent combos you have to follow in order to maximize your damage output, but there are convenient combos you can perform so that you can dish out your damage faster so you can keep moving. As of now, Witch is a pretty strong damage dealer for the skill required to play her. Knowing how to keep moving in a fight while also dealing damage, I think, is one of the most important skills you have to hone if you want to play Witch. Her kit allows her to move pretty freely, and if you don't capitalize on it, you might take damage or die in raids. This was something I had to learn when I got serious about playing Witch better in endgame content. So, how do you keep moving? I've already touched on an important skill that glues several skills together: broomstick spin. When you're in the air while doing a skill, usually you want to land fast, and with broomstick spin, you can land fast and throw out a skill like gravitas or even your awakenings. This is much better than floating in the air for 1 to 2 seconds and possibly getting hit. If you're also running the Lollipop Crush Talisman, you can cast it, then cancel into a lot of other skills. Another tool you can use to keep moving in a fight is failing certain skills like Furnace and Mega Drill. The fail animations for these skills are much faster, and so you're allowed to move earlier when you do these casts. The Mega Drill damage reduction sounds pretty nice, but most mechanics nowadays are either just straight up super lethal, so you die anyways since your drill just explodes immediately, or can be dodged by either Manteau or Frosty if the attack doesn't bypass iframes. I don't have any footage at this time, but every time I've tried to use Mega Drill to mitigate damage from a failed Ozma Berserk attack, I usually just die anyway, unless I'm timing it wrong. Once you've mastered how to string together your machines and spells while also moving in a fight, you've pretty much captured the spirit of Witch gameplay. Would I recommend Witch to newer players? Yes, because she's cute. A more serious answer is still yes, because she's simple to play, dishes out decent damage with some investment, and her gameplay emphasizes an important aspect of DFO endgame content: how to keep moving while doing damage. Looking at some 110 cap gameplay from KDNF right now, I think knowing how to do this is going to be pretty important in the near future. So in conclusion of this guide video, I want to talk about several things here. I honestly think Witch is a very fun class to play that's not too complicated, and also her skills and familiars are so cute, so you get to see pretty explosions and funny animations while you do serious content or farm. I hope that with this modest guide, I've given insight on how the class works and how you can improve your Witch gameplay. I really love this class, and I've been thinking for a long time now on making something worthwhile for my favorite class ever on DFO. I'm glad I finally got the courage and more knowledge and experience to make a guide for this wonderful class. I'm hoping to maybe make more Witch content like this in the future as I learn more when new stuff comes out, or when I finally stop being shy and talk to other Witch players in the DFO global server. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope you're all ready to fly, fellow Witches. See you in the next video.